Okay, good evening everyone. Hello, welcome to live stream number 2. This is Tuesday the 15th of May at 7:30 p.m. and this is our second and hopefully final live stream in preparation for the GCSE RE exam. So thank you for joining me. Firstly, just want to say a big welcome to you. Obviously many of you joined us on Sunday and we had what seemed to be quite a successful live stream, so welcome back if you were there on Sunday. If you weren't there on Sunday and you found out about it afterwards and now you're joining in to see what all the fuss was about, then welcome. I hope that you find this particularly beneficial. So this evening I'm going to be focusing on again preparing students for the AQA exam tomorrow. Obviously if you're doing EduCAS and EdExcel, I think you may also have an exam tomorrow which may cover some of the same material. Particularly I'm going to be focusing on Judaism, but also the two themes that AQA, or two of the three themes that we do in AQA, which is the human rights and social justice and the relationships and family unit. So we will get onto those as well. If you have any questions, I'm going to ask you to send them to me in the live chat. I'll be honest, before Sunday I hadn't really followed the live chat too closely, and then given what happened on Sunday with lots of people involved, and I had never heard of this thing called Super Chat before then, so that was a real eye-opener to me. Basically, if you want to send a question, you have two options. You can either do it on Twitter. I have got my Twitter feed open on another screen here, which I will be able to update every so often. I also will try and keep an eye on the Super Chat. I would suggest... I was very surprised for people to actually pay money on Sunday to take part. Didn't really expect that, but you know, I'm not going to say no. But what I've decided, rather than make it seem like I'm doing this to earn lots of money, I've made a decision that any money that is raised, so that includes the money that was raised on Sunday, I'm going to put towards my Saturday football team. You may not believe it, but most of your teachers, including me, we actually have a life and we do things outside of school. On Saturdays during the year I play for a football team and we need a new football kit. So if you feel like donating in order to get a question to the top of the Super Chat, then please know that it will go towards a very worthy cause which will help us to look quite good next year in our new kit. And if we get enough, I might even get the sponsorship on the front of the shirt to say where the money has come from. So that's something different for tonight. So if that appeals to you and you want to ask a question on the Super Chat, or you just want to get a comment to the top, please know that any money you donate will go to a worthy cause. Right, before we get started, although we have already started, but before we go any further, just a reminder of some of the resources that are available. I did mention these all on Sunday, so I'm not going to go through all of them in detail today. Just to remember, there is a key terms list that you can get from the exam board. There is a revision checklist that I've done, which lists every single topic, and you can check against that to see that you've done everything. There's a key quotes section or sheet that one of my colleagues has put together, which you can find there. That's just a simple PDF document. And then there are two videos there on kind of exam technique for answering questions. The first one goes through every type of question. The second one there, the 12 marker, specifically focuses on the 12 mark question. Okay. This evening, I don't feel I really need to go over the exam overview. You've all done an exam now. You had one on Monday. I've had quite a bit of feedback. Most people seem to think it was all right, although there were a couple of tough questions in there. But now you know what to expect, so I don't really feel the need to spend much time on this particular slide describing what you're going to go through, because you've done it already. And if you're doing EduCAS or EdExcel, this wouldn't even be the same for you either. So let's not bother with that. So let's jump straight in. I did have a look on Twitter beforehand to see a few questions that people are asking. Once I get through these, then I'll obviously try and respond to your questions as they come through either the live chat or through Twitter. If you can hear that vibrating in the background, that is my phone. I've got my Twitter set up, so I might take questions on there as well. Okay, let's have a start with this question, which came from Michael. Firstly, he said, I was told there might be a live stream tonight on the Judaism and Themes paper. Yes, you got your information correct, Michael. Well done. Therefore, I wanted to ask if you could go over the structure and the decorations of a synagogue. Thank you. So as you can see, I've put kind of 6 bullet points down here just to get us started. So we start with the menorah. That's a many-branched candle. There are slightly different versions. There are some that have 7 branches and some that have 9. Some of them are used throughout the year. Some of them are only relevant during Hanukkah, which is a celebration that usually happens around winter time. You then have the Star of David, which was an emblem. You'll often see this on the outside of synagogues as well as inside of a synagogue. So sometimes it's recognizable, just as you might recognise a church by seeing a cross, you might recognise a synagogue by seeing an image of the Star of David. It's a very simple geometric shape, two equilateral triangles kind of over each other, and that is a reminder of King David, who in Judaism is kind of treated or seen as the most important or best example of a king or leader. You then will often find a representation of the Ten Commandments, obviously not the actual original Ten Commandments themselves, but you'll see often this representation either as images or a carving on the wall which sets out the Ten Commandments, normally in the original Hebrew language, although some places may actually put them in the local language. They're a reminder, obviously, of those Ten Commandments and the laws that Jews find as being very, very important to them as part of their Jewish identity to follow those laws. So that's why they will tend to have an image of those. So those are kind of symbols or images you will find. Those first three. The next ones, in fact, why don't I highlight those first ones in yellow, just say those are kind of symbols or images you might see, and then the others are actual physical features. So 3 physical features that you need to really be aware of. We have the ark, okay, not to be confused with Noah's Ark. Okay, this is something very different. It is an Old Testament term. So in the Old Testament, when Moses received the Ten Commandments, you may remember, according to the Torah, he had them written or presented to him on stone tablets. According to Jewish tradition, those tablets were put in a container which was called the Ark of the Covenant, and that was carried with the Jewish people wherever they went whilst they were on their way to Jerusalem. Eventually, when they got to Jerusalem, they built a temple and they put the Ark of the Covenant right in the centre of the temple, and so it is the focal point, or was the focal point of worship in the temple. So in synagogues today, they've used that same name to say this is the focal point. This is kind of where God is present most within this synagogue. And the reason that would be true for Jews is because within the Ark of the Covenant, they put the Torah scrolls. And in most synagogues, these are handwritten scrolls. They actually cost thousands of pounds because it takes many years for a person to write them by hand. They don't just have a cheap printed copy, they have kind of handwritten copies, which are very valuable. And because Jews believe God inspired those words, those are the word of God, they come from God, then they believe in a sense God is present in that word, not in a kind of way that if you touch it, it will, do something special, but the idea that God is present within those words. So the ark is the central focal point. So if you were to walk into a synagogue, it would be the thing that probably your attention was drawn to in terms of the layout with the chairs facing in that direction. Then in front of the ark, or perhaps in the front to the side, you will have a reading platform which is called the bimah. Firstly, I should say at this point, if there's any Hebrew pronunciations I get wrong, I do apologise. I'm not a native Hebrew speaker. If there's anyone out there who does and feels like they need to give me some comments or feedback on that, please do. So the bimah is what Christians would refer to as a lectern, and it's basically a platform from which a person is able to read. So on a practical level, that needs to be kind of raised up so everyone can see. It needs to be in the centre where everyone can hear. In a modern synagogue, it might also have, a microphone to help with the amplification and so on. But it is simply a place where the Torah scrolls, once they're taken out of the ark, placed on the bimah, and that's where they would read from. And then near to the ark, you will have an eternal light, sometimes called the Ner Tamid. And particularly for Catholics, this is an idea they're quite familiar with, because if you go into a Catholic church, near the tabernacle, where Catholics believe Christ is present in the tabernacle, then there's a sanctuary lamp. It's literally just a candle that is meant to be kept lit at all times. Obviously, eventually the candle runs out and someone quickly tries to replace it as soon as they realise it's run out. It doesn't literally have to be eternal or ever going on. And the same is true in a synagogue. They have this eternal light, this Ner Tamid, which is near the ark, as a reminder that God is present there in the scriptures, in the Torah. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for a moment before I go on to the next one. I can see someone who has made a big donation. Thank you very much to it says Nikita. I'm just seeing if there's actually a question there. No, there isn't, but okay, that's a nice comment. You've got lots of people to see that. There you go. I'm pleased for you with your results there. Congratulations. So thank you, Nikita. That's great. That's at least another shirt or two for our football team. So let's move on to the second set of questions that I had. So this one comes from Kate Brewer. Kate, bad form. You haven't even got an image on your Twitter avatar. That's very poor form. Need to get that sorted out as soon as possible. Also, not going to point this out. spelling error there on my name, but never mind. Even my own students spell my name wrong when they fill in the front of their exercise book, so don't be worried about it. But anyway, Kate, great question. Just want to say thank you for doing these live streams. That's fantastic. Appreciate it. When you do Judaism, could you please go over the Tanakh and the Talmud? Thank you. Okay. Yeah, this has come up a few times. I've been looking at the Twitter stream just the last few minutes. There were people putting that on there as well. So I've got some notes here, and then I'm going to try and draw a quick diagram to represent this, because I think actually this is something that can be better understood in a visual sense. So within Judaism, there is a difference between the written law and the oral law. And the confusing thing is that the oral law is also written. So that is understandably why people get confused. What's the difference? The basic idea is that the written law refers to the kind of original written law, the kind of earliest scriptures within Judaism. And we use the word Tanakh to refer to that. And it's not a typo there, how I put some random capital letters in the word there. That's deliberate, because Tanakh is what we might call an acronym. It's based on 3 Hebrew letters. Okay, now Hebrew is in a different alphabet to English, so there's not an exact comparison, but it's pretty close to the letters T, N, and K. And basically it refers to the Torah. Again, this is where my Hebrew pronunciation might be poor. The Nevi'im and the Ketuvim. These are the 3 sections of what Christians would call the Old Testament, what Jews would call the Tanakh. The Torah is the first 5 books of Moses, so that starts off with Genesis, Exodus, and so on. So they're referred to as the 5 books of Moses because Jewish tradition says that they were written by Moses. And they kind of contain the real early history of the Israelite people, going right back to their accounts of creation through the Exodus and so on. Then you have the writings of the prophets, and that kind of tells the later history of the Jewish people. So you have kind of like the judges and the kings that were later appointed to kind of lead Israel after Moses had gone. And then you have the Ketuvim, the writings. That's all the things like the Psalms and the Song of Solomon, Proverbs. These are the kind of wisdom teachings that the Jews refer to. So together, they are kind of like the original written scripture, and they're kind of, for want of a better word, set in stone. They don't change. They're kind of set there, and they're accepted by pretty much all Jews. Would say those writings have authority, that they're kind of from God and they need to be taken seriously. But as with any rule, as soon as people set a rule, people have questions. Well, you've said to us we shouldn't murder, but what happens if someone attacks me? Can I kill them? Is that the same thing? Or you've said we shouldn't steal, but what happens if I have nothing to eat? Is it okay to steal then? And those sorts of questions and queries were quickly added on to, or rather asked of, the original written text. And all of those answers that were given, firstly by Moses and then by later kings and judges, were collected together and passed on. And this is where I'm going to go on to the next slide, because I want to kind of draw this to make this a little bit easier for you to kind of picture, because it's quite a difficult concept to get around. So we have kind of the original, this is my attempt at drawing the tablets of the 10 Commandments. You have the 10 Commandments, which were kind of written on stone, and everyone who is Jewish kind of accepted. These are from God. We must follow these 10 Commandments. These are so important. And then you had the kind of stories that had been told about creation and so on. So all of this stuff kind of made it into the Torah scrolls. And this is going to be quite difficult to draw using a mouse, but hopefully you'll get the general idea. So here I'm trying to draw a set of scrolls that have all of those writings on. Actually, that's not too bad, just considering I'm using a mouse. And that is what we would kind of call the Tanakh. Okay, I'm going to write this with my right hand on the mouse, which is not particularly easy. So we have the Tanakh, that's the written law. And again, not quite set in stone as much as the commandments were, literally on those tablets of stone, but certainly fixed, and once it was written, it couldn't really be changed, and they took a lot of care to, when they made copies of the Torah, they would do it very, very carefully to make sure that it wasn't changed. But as I said, people would very quickly have these questions. They would say, well, Moses, you said to us don't murder, but what about this? You said to us don't commit adultery, what about that? And they would ask these questions, and Moses would answer them. He would say, well, you know, if someone attacks you and the only thing you can do to defend yourself is to kill them back, then that's okay. And he added all these answers. And as you can see, these answers here kind of got collected together. They were collections of sayings. Okay, and if I kind of draw a circle around them very roughly, you've got this collection of sayings that people then learned by memory and passed on. Okay, so it wasn't just people were used to passing things on by word of mouth, and so these became referred to as the oral law, the kind of spoken law. These were the interpretations and the commentary on the original written law. And this is where it gets confusing, because eventually some bright spark said, well, there's lots of this and this is all very good, how about we write it down? Okay, and so they wrote it down, and by this point we probably had the early stages of kind of books that could be bound together, and that got referred to, or is given the name, the Talmud. Okay, and the Talmud, and this is where I'm going to go back to the slide, itself is split into two. Okay, all wrong way, need to go to this one. So the Talmud is made up of two parts that people have asked me about. We've got the Mishnah and the Gemara. Okay, the Mishnah is a commentary on the Torah. So the Mishnah is basically all of those, all of those collections of sayings that were added after and later. Okay, so they were written down eventually and called the Mishnah. And then, lo and behold, people started doing the same process again. So if we have the Talmud or the Mishnah down here, people would then start asking questions of that. They say, right, well, the interpretation says it's okay to, kill someone in self-defense, but do you have to wait to be certain they're actually trying to kill you before you do that, or do you just have to believe that they are? That sort of thing. So there would be even more questions. Okay, you can see where we're going with this. There'd be even more questions, and so they eventually were collected together, and that's where we get the Gemara from. So that is the later discussions on the Mishnah. So if you're struggling a bit, as I am, just running out of breath explaining that, don't be surprised. It's quite a complex topic. Why does any of this matter? Well, you've got various disagreements within Judaism as to how applicable these two different groups or these different groups of text are. As a broad idea, kind of all Jews accept the authority of the written law. They would say, yes, that we can be fairly confident that was written by Moses or written by people who had experienced God and had heard from God. So they would generally follow or accept that what is in there has authority. However, when it comes to the oral law, not all Jews accept that. So I'm just going to type some, apologies for the using a highlighter for writing. So not all Jews would accept the authority of the oral law. Some would say, well, those are just later interpretations. Those are just different people's views, and therefore I don't have to listen to them. And so that's where, your progressive or your reform Jews will say, actually, some of those interpretations, those later commentaries, are not as important. Whereas Orthodox Jews are more like to say, actually, no, we can still trust those. Those still have value. We should listen to them. Okay, so that's where that all comes from. Right, let's see. There was somebody else on the live chat who posted a decent donation. I'm just going to see if they actually asked a question. See if I can go back and find it. Here we go. Oh, it did. I had it there for a second, then it disappeared. Theology of the body would be great. Also, can you do on Shabbat in the home? Well, I certainly can do Shabbat on the home. Oh, sorry, it's Nikita again. You're asking a question this time. Well done. So I certainly can do Shabbat in the home, and theology of the body we'll get to later when we look at relationships. So yes, so Shabbat in the home. Let's see. Was that one of the things that I was going to do anyway? I was going to look at the Amidah, the standing prayer. Let's have a quick go at that now. So Shabbat in the home, I'm just going to put a new slide. So Shabbat in the home. Let's remind ourselves. So this is for Nikita XO. So firstly, obviously we know what Shabbat is. So it's the kind of Hebrew word for the Sabbath day. Okay, the day of rest. What confuses some people is the fact that actually, obviously, in the Western world, we're used to the 24-hour clock and the idea that a day starts at midnight and ends at midnight. Actually, in ancient cultures, they tended to think of days starting at sundown or sometimes at sunrise. So when we say Shabbat for Jews, we're actually talking from Friday sunset until Saturday sunrise. Okay, I'm just getting a message from my wonderful assistant. Some people are getting lagging experience on their internet connection. If that's affecting you, I do apologise. I'm just looking at how we're doing for time. Yeah, that's weird. I started at past. I've been going for nearly 20 minutes, but it says I've only been live for 13 minutes. So I guess some of you might be missing some aspects, so maybe it has been dropping out. I do apologise if that is you. What I might do, if it gets bad enough, I might have to restart and just check if there's anything I can do to boost and make sure the bandwidth is not being used up. Right, anyway, I'll carry on. So Shabbat runs from Friday sunset until Saturday sunset. Okay, there is the opportunity, so some Jews will go to a short service at the synagogue. I can't type synagogue on a Saturday, not on a Saturday, on a Friday eve, and a longer service on Saturday morning. Okay, now I know the question is about Shabbat in the home, but the point I'm trying to make here is that actually most of Shabbat is in the home. So even though most Jews will still go to the synagogue either both on the Friday evening or on the Saturday, actually the majority and the central focus for the day is on worshipping in the home. Okay, and it's kind of started, just correct my spelling there on Jews, it started by the lighting of candles, and that's usually by the most senior woman in the household. Okay, so normally it's the mother's job to light the candles and kind of welcome in the Sabbath day. Okay, then usually the evening meal is celebrated together. So it's kind of it's not necessarily a significant religious meal. It's not like a Seder meal where each item has to be significant. You know, they can eat whatever they want, whatever is the local custom, whatever happens to be popular. But the point is that it's celebrated together as a family. Okay, as a day of rest, you know, family time is prioritized. Now, what things do Jews not do on Shabbat? Well, basically, we know it's a day of rest, so they try not to do any work. Now, Orthodox Jews will interpret this to mean anything that could constitute work for anyone. So they may go so far as to not use any electricity, or certainly not initiate any electricity, so they won't turn things on. They can use, if they're smart, they can use automatic timers if they're set up before. Okay, so they may not drive. Okay, so if they don't live close to the synagogue, that may prevent them from going to the synagogue. There are what's other things they don't. So no electricity, no driving, no kind of cooking of food. Okay, so again, lots of the food has to be prepared beforehand. Obviously, all of those things, Reform or progressive Jews may do some or none of the above. Okay, so Reform and progressive Jews would say, well, if these laws, it's the purpose of those laws, things that are meant to help us. If they become too much of a distraction, then we don't need to follow them. Okay, right. So we've got the starting by the mother lighting the candles. We've got the evening meal. We've got the fact they do no work, and then ending with a blessing. So again, once sunset happens on the Saturday, and I believe there's a tradition that says once you can see 3 stars in the sky, which is normally when you can see the stars, that's a sign that the day has passed over. Then they have that blessing to kind of end the Sabbath, end Shabbat, and kind of carry on with the rest of the week. Okay, right, let's see if we have some more comments before I go on to the next part. So I'm just going to check in with the live chat just to see, are we still getting issues with the streaming? I'm seeing my streaming software is saying I'm dropping a few frames, although only less than 1%, so that shouldn't really be an issue. I'm just looking at the live chat, not seeing any comments really that are talking about poor connection or anything, so I'm going to assume that I can carry on. It may just well be that there's a delay, but you're still picking up everything. Okay, let's have a look. We've got a couple of people who've paid to have their comments read out. We've got Lid. I'm not sure if that's initials or short for something. Thanks for helping my little sister revise. Very kind of you. Older brother or sister or relative. That's very good to do that on that behalf. And I think there was another comment there from someone called Finley who said this is the worst £5 I ever spent. I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure you can think of some other things you've spent £5 on that are of less value than this. But anyway, you're helping to a good cause. This money is going to help buy the kit for my football team for next year. If you didn't pick that up already, I'm part of a Saturday football team, and I've said any donations that come in from the Super Chat will go towards new kit for our team. So yeah. Anyway, moving on. I have another question here. So this came from Kieran. Please could you do some stuff on the Amidah prayer and the Mishnah and the Gemara? So I've already covered the Mishnah and the Gemara, Kieran. If you weren't here earlier, then please go back and check what I said on that earlier. You should, at the end of the live stream, it will upload as a kind of normal video, and you can scroll through as you wish to find the questions you want to look at. So the Amidah prayer, this came up in one of the sample assessment papers that AQA put out. So I think people have kind of recognise that this is something that may come up. So the Amidah prayer, it's quite hard to describe. It is a daily prayer, so it's something that Jews would like to be able to say every day. Orthodox Jews will certainly make an effort to pray this every day. When it's prayed, it's normally prayed in the synagogue, although it doesn't have to be as far as I'm aware, but it is generally something that's prayed in the synagogue. And when it's prayed, they will actually, which sounds a bit like a contradiction, they'll say it in silence, where you think they're not actually saying it, but they will kind of almost whisper or say it under their breath, and they will generally face towards Jerusalem. Kind of symbolism there. Obviously Jerusalem is the central point of the Jewish faith because it's where the temple stood. If you were to go to a synagogue on a weekday, so any day other than the Sabbath day, then you would find that this is the hold on, my wonderful assistant is wanting to give me an update. Okay, what I'm going to say... Oh, now the lag is kicking in. Suddenly lots of people saying on this. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to stop and I'm going to restart because I'm getting lots of people saying we are having lagging. Again, yes, my software is saying that the number of frames getting dropped is quite high. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to restart, and hopefully we'll get going in another 10 minutes. Please try not to go anywhere. Hopefully we'll get this resolved. I do apologise if you've been affected by the lagging, and we'll see where we can go.